Whether the team is performing clean or unsightly, we'll cover it all here on Washington Football Nightly. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So Washington does what it's supposed to do in week number 18. Smother the New York Giants 22-7, win the football game, finish up the season at 7-10. They lost 2 spots of draft position by getting a win. I don't care. And for some of you, that's a big deal. For me, it's not. At the end of the day, you go out and you try to win football games, especially when it's against a divisional foe. You want to sweep the Giants. Joe Judge was talking all kinds of shit at the end of the season, coming out of his neck sideways, and we've got some more discussion about Joe Judge later on in the show. And he needed to get a dose of some hard reality that you suck as a coach and your team is absolutely garbage canned juice. So we were able to provide that for him and his team on the way out. And so all of those things were, to me, necessary evils. And it was perfectly worth falling back 2 spots in the draft, if you ask me. Now, what does this mean? Where do you go from here as an organization? You know, I did a lot of listening over the last 48 hours to exit interviews. Ron Rivera and Martin Mayhew just had a press conference together talking about the plans of the offseason. Ron Rivera was on a radio program, The Junkies, where there was some good information there as well. So did a lot of listening over, like I said, the last 48 hours or so. And what I've gathered is, one, I'm very optimistic about the future. And this is a good group of guys that we have. And I know that there are holes on this roster and there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Don't fool yourself. And I'm not sitting here telling you that we're super talented and that, you know, the sky's the limit, this, that, and the third. What I am telling you, though, is we're not the worst team in the world. This team isn't horrible. We're not back where we were in 2019. Some of the things that I've been reading from some of you are just asinine, okay? I mean, again, I get that you're frustrated. It's a disappointing end to a season that was a roller coaster ride. To start 2-2, have some of those ups like the Falcons game and the Giants game to start, and then to lose 4 straight and look like a horrible football team, then to win 4 straight, feel like, hey, we can conquer the world, and then to lose 4 straight again and pretty much have your season ended by divisional foes, specifically 2 teams in particular, Dallas and Philadelphia. That's a bitter pill to swallow. There are a lot of circumstances surrounding that. We've talked about it. We've touched on them. We don't need to rehash them. But at the end of the day, the biggest thing for me is health. That's the first thing. What are they going to do with some of the players that have expiring contracts? They've already shown that they're going to be aggressive with some of these guys. And I'm just going to tell you from what I'm hearing, and, you know, that's my thing, is I like to try and draw inferences from what I hear. And what I'm hearing right now is a team that feels like its identity, it's in the trenches, okay? Just listening to Rivera talk, listening to these players, the move that they made locking up Charles Leno Jr., I believe they think that their identity exists with this offensive line and the defensive line. And they want to start there and fan their way out. So if you ask me, is Brandon Scherff going to be back? I think they want him back. I think they're going to put that same deal they had on the table last year. And I'm pretty sure most of you have already heard what Martin Mayhew had to say at the press conference today. But he said, and I'm not going to get into that press conference today. You know, I'm not going to talk about it today. We'll save that for our live show on Thursday night. And I really get into the meat and potatoes of what was said and you know, what I gathered from that press conference on Thursday night. But what I will say is he made it abundantly clear to everyone listening. Hey, look, we offered Brandon Scherff a deal that would have made him the highest paid guard in the NFL. There's not much more we can do at this point. So I think that same deal is going to exist. I think they want him here. I think they feel like he's a part of the solution. They feel like he's one of the leaders on this team, and they want Brandon Scherff here, much to the dismay of many of us as fans who feel like, look, you can do a lot more with $100 million than spend it on a right guard, albeit an all-pro, like 5-time, Pro Bowl guard that if he continues on the path that he's on, may ultimately end up in the Hall of Fame. Again, I don't view Brandon Scherff as a Hall of Fame player, but the statistics, when it's all said and done, may say otherwise. He's already been an all-pro, which is a huge step in becoming a Hall of Famer. The guy is building a hell of a resume, another Pro Bowl appearance this year. And if he just stays relatively healthy, just off of name alone, he'll continue to make the Pro Bowl each and every single year. So when you look up, he's a 12-time Pro Bowler, 2-time All-Pro. That's Hall of Fame credentials, folks. So at the end of the day, I think they want him here. He's already said he wants to be here. And I believe him. I believed him last year. I believed him the year before that. I told you guys last year he had no reason to sign a long-term deal with this organization because there was no benefit for him. He was going to get the franchise tag for a second consecutive year. He was going to be making $18 million. Why would you sign a long-term deal making 20 when you can get 18 for 1 year and then get that same bite at that apple next year? It just didn't make any sense on his part to sign a long-term deal, which is why he didn't. Even though the deal would have made him the highest paid in the league, there was no reason for him to sign it. He had Washington by the scrotum, and he took advantage of that, and I would have done the same thing, and you would have done the same thing had you been put in that position. Ron Rivera got here 2 years ago. He didn't want to give anybody an extension, so that's why Scherff didn't get it that year, and they put themselves in a position where they franchised him when Rivera got here. They had to franchise him again last year because they couldn't figure out a deal, and they didn't want to let him walk. And now they can't franchise him this year. Okay, third year, is a death sentence in terms of a franchise tag. That number goes up exponentially. They're not paying him quarterback money to play right guard, so they're not going to franchise tag him a third straight year. So what that ultimately means is either they're going to have to offer him a deal that looked like the one last year, but it's probably going to have to be worth a little bit more money. Inflation happens in the NFL. The cap is going up. His agent is going to make sure that they know that, hey, the cap's up. Last year, the cap was down, and this was the number. This year, the cap's up, so the number is now XYZ. So we'll see if Washington wants to climb that ladder and extend him a deal north of $100 million. And an aggregate, I'd say maybe $5 million on a 5-year deal, $21 million per year. I think that's where we're heading. Do you want to pay a guard that? I know the answer for you guys is no. I feel the same way, but they want him here. They feel like he's a part of this organization moving forward and a guy that they need to have in that locker room. And I just said, they feel like their best grouping on this team right now is the offensive line, which is why they brought Leno back. They love the depth that they have on the offensive line. They love their frontline starters, and they think Scherff is one of the catalysts of that group. So if you feel like you're building there, because this is the thing, if you're going to draft a quarterback or you're going to trade for a quarterback, and that's something else Rivera said on a radio program, is that, look, we will leave no stone unturned. He said that last year, and they went after Matthew Stafford. I believe him when he says it, and I'm going to tell you right now, and I know I've said this, and I've been adamant about this in the past, I think they may actually be interested on Deshaun Watson. I know that the track record of this organization and what Deshaun Watson is going through really don't mesh well together. And I think also the fact that Ron has made it a point of emphasis to keep this organization on the field with the players that are on this roster relatively clean. They've gotten good guys. That's why there was no Darius Geis type players or any players like Reuben Foster on this roster, because they don't fit the DNA profile of what a Washington football team, or whatever the hell we're going to be called here in the next month or so, looks like. And so I don't know if Deshaun Watson necessarily fits that profile either with what he's got going on, but I can tell you this much. Ron's desperate. His front office is desperate. And desperate times call for desperate measures. And I think they may be willing to look the other way. Even if he didn't do anything wrong, perception is reality a lot of times, even if it's not the right way to go about things. In the court of public opinion, you are guilty until proven innocent. That's where Deshaun Watson is. For most people, they're willing to look the other way, especially if you're a fan of a team looking to upgrade the quarterback position. I think Ron and company are going to inquire about him this offseason. I think they're going to do their homework and their due diligence. And I think they really are desperate. And I don't know if they are willing. Last year, I think they felt like they were in a better spot. They were ahead of schedule, and they could afford to not go after a Deshaun Watson, right? This year, you take a step back, okay? You're same, win total, but you feel differently about the 7 wins this year than you did last year. The pressure's starting to mount. Now you're going into year 3, okay, of what is a 5-year deal. Pressure's starting to mount. You feel like, hey, we got to get a guy in here now, whether that's the draft or free agency or trade. They're going to do something at quarterback. I wouldn't rule out Deshaun Watson. I don't think he's going to end up here, ultimately. One, Watson himself has to want to come here. And why would he want to do that? Rivera talked about that. He said, hey, we are a destination for these quarterbacks. Like, I don't know what, fantasy land Ron Rivera lives in. And obviously, what is he supposed to say? I mean, this is his team. He feels good about his team. So what is he supposed to say? Yeah, we stink on the field. Off the field, we're a mess. We're a train wreck. I get it. I know why no one would want to come here. No, it's not going to say that, but that's the reality of the situation. Is you can sit here and talk about Terry McLaurin and, Curtis Samuel, who did not really play this season, okay? You could talk about Logan Thomas and J.D. McKissick. J.D. McKissick's not even under contract, right now as we stand. Once we hit March, 13th or whatever the start of the new league year is, he's not under contract here in Washington. So, can't be listing guys as, playmakers that aren't even, necessarily going to be on the roster as of right now. Antonio Gibson's another talented player, but there isn't a ton of talent. Despite what Ron may say to you, there's not a ton of talent offensively like we believed going into the season, right? Now, De'Ami Brown can show more growth, and, Curtis Samuel can come in and be what they thought he was going to be when they signed him. And all of a sudden, this, Logan Thomas comes back healthy. Whatever they decide to do, whether they do nothing at tight end and it's Logan Thomas and Ricky Seals-Jones or, and John Bates, or they decide to, upgrade the position, move on from Ricky Seals-Jones, keep Logan Thomas and John Bates, obviously, and then add another guy, or Sammy Reyes continues to develop, whatever the case may be, there is talent at the tight end position. Then things could change drastically, and the way we feel about this offense could change drastically. But I think there still needs to be work done there. And I don't see the Deshaun Watson wanting to come into this. He just left a dysfunctional organization. What stops him from seeing, again, when you're on the outside looking in, this looks like just like the Houston Texans. This looks just like the New York Giants. This looks just as dysfunctional as all of the other poor run franchises in football. What stops Deshaun Watson from feeling like, why the hell would I want to go there? They look just like the place I'm running from. So, again, he'd have to choose us because he's got a no trade clause. I don't see him doing that. But Washington's going to also have to want him. And I don't necessarily know if that's the case. But I do think Ron is a little bit more desperate this year than he was last year. But I said all of that to say this. They're going to go after Brandon Scherff in free agency and try to retain him. I think that they are going to bring back Bobby McCain. I think they're going to bring back J.D. McKissick. I think they're going to bring back all the guys that they feel like are a part of this new direction that they're going in. And Ron said during the press conference with Martin Mayhew, look, we're going to get a new name. We're going to get a new identity. I want to leave the past behind us. Impossible, Ron. In theory, that's a great concept. Impossible, okay? What we've dealt with is a fan base over the last, for some, 10, others 20, people like myself 30, and others who have been here a lot longer, 40, 50 years. And when you get into that 40 range, that was the golden age, 50 years, golden age. But if you're in that little, if you're in that window like me of 30 years, this has been a nightmare. That's essentially what this has been. A nightmare that we cannot seem to wake up from. And so you can't just forget that. You can ask us for, the ability to move forward and give you a chance to create new history here. When? You want us to forget about 2021 or 2019? You want us to forget about these failed seasons? You want us to forget about some of the off the field stuff? You want that stuff to be pushed back into the back of our memory banks? Win football games and we'll stop talking about the past. But until you do, that's the shit that continues to be brought up because losing makes us feel like 2021. Losing makes us feel like 2019. Losing makes us feel like we felt for the last 20, 30 years when we have perennially been a loser every year. So I get what Ron is saying. Easier said than done. The only way to change that narrative is to win. And the fastest way to win is to get a quarterback. And that's why I think he's entertaining the thought of a Deshaun Watson. But I really feel like this is a pivotal offseason. We've talked about that. We'll talk about it ad nauseum as we get into the offseason even deeper. But what I want to do is I want to transition into in other news because there was a lot of things said before we jump into the Washington football team and all of the exit interviews that were done. We got to start with Joe Judge in New York because I begged, I pleaded. I thought I got what I wanted. Josina Anderson was reporting yesterday that Joe Judge was safe. And that was one of the most heartwarming things of the last week for me. I felt so warm and fuzzy inside, sort of like when Dave Gettleman year after year would be retained in New York, and we were always talking about protect Gettleman at all costs. I felt those same feelings, yesterday when Josina Anderson reported that Joe Judge was going to be retained in New York. I was like, hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Well, that whole bubble burst, and that excitement was shattered today when learning that Joe Judge was shown the door, rightfully so. I mean, the Maras, they're completely incompetent, as owners in New York. However, this needed to be done. And this was to me, I don't even know why it took as long as it did. This guy is a buffoon, Joe Judge, fake tough guy, Joe Judge, that is. And how he, sometimes, if you can talk your way, if you can sell water to a well, you can get an NFL head coaching job. I mean, some of the guys we've seen over the last 5 years be one and done. We said, how the hell did they get the job? Well, they went into that interview and they knocked that thing out of the park. They said all the right things. They got everybody to believe in their vision. And I told you, when Joe Judge first got that job, I said, man, that was an impressive interview. That press conference, that was impressive. I was like, man, I like this guy. And then what I realized is this guy is all talk, no substance, okay? He can talk the draws off of any female out there. But when he gets in the bedroom, it ain't a lot of action, okay? That's Joe Judge in a nutshell. Pause, okay? This is a guy that can talk the talk, and he can have all of this big guy, fake, tough guy, bravado. But when it's all said and done, this guy is a clown show. And the Giants organization, I thought for a second there, they're going to let this guy get away with the buffoonery and tomfoolery that we saw this season and let him come back and do it again. And I was begging for it because I said, if the Giants want to finish 4-13 again next year, bring this clown back. And we were this close to having that come to fruition. I'm disappointed that they saw fit to move on from him. It's the right thing to do. I mean, even the Giants greats like Michael Strahan and Eli Manning and some of these other guys are like, look, we got to get this guy the hell out of here. This guy is the worst, And, generally, ex-players are some of the most optimistic when it comes to coaches. No one ever wants to say anything bad about a guy that's coaching or, running their former organization. You try to be positive, but when it's that bad, it's that bad, and you got to move on. And the Giants did that. So it's a bittersweet day for me because I was excited listening to the fellas. I was excited listening to Ron Rivera. And then I get this news, and it puts a bit of a damper on what was a great day. Joe Judge out as Giants head coach, shown the door, handed his pink slip on the way out. Damn it, man. They're going to, whatever they do, even if it's another clown, it's an upgrade over Joe Judge. You can't do any worse than what he was as a head coach. So that's a little bit deflating because the Giants actually have talent. I've said this before. I'll say it again. I think they're in the same boat as us. I think they actually have more talent at the skill positions than we do. However, their offensive line stinks, and that's why I think we're better off than them. But they're in the same boat as us. They need a quarterback. I don't believe in Daniel Jones, and I don't think they believe in Daniel Jones. I don't know if they're ready to quit on Daniel Jones quite yet, but they're in the same boat as us. They need a quarterback, and we'll see what happens. But I like our position. I like where we are more so than when they are. I'll just tell you that. I don't care if they have more skill guy talent than us. I like where we are more so than when they are. They are a mess. But they get the right guy in there, they could turn it around. We've seen it done in the NFL before, so it would not surprise me if it happened to the Giants. But anyway, on the Washington football team matters. So exit strategies, or excuse me, exit interviews. You have these every year after the season's done. All these players sit down, chit-chat with the media for about a good 5 to 7 minutes. Reflect on the season, talk about what the future plans for the offseason are, and anything in between that. And so you heard from us Louie players. I mean, on the offensive line, we heard from Charles Leno Jr., we heard from Brandon Scherff. At the quarterback position, we heard from Taylor Heineke. At the running back position, we heard from Antonio Gibson. At the receiver position, we heard from Terry McLaurin. On the defensive side of the football, we heard from Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, and Matt Ioannidis on the defensive line, and Chase Young, on the defensive line. Cole Holcomb, Jamin Davis spoke after the game. He didn't speak at the exit interview, but we heard from Cole Holcomb. In the secondary, we heard from Cameron Curl. So we again a slew of players, and that's what you expect because everyone's packing up, leaving for the year, and you just reflect and you want to hear from these guys on the way out. So the biggest takeaway for me was something that I don't know if you guys gathered or not, but it was Cole Holcomb pretty much begging to be the starting middle linebacker next year. He's like, look, of all the positions I played this year, dime backer, outside linebacker, whether weak side, middle linebacker, the mic is the place where I feel like I belong. And he's like, the biggest thing is when I got that green dot, and he's like, I've had that green dot, for most of the year. After John Bostic got injured, he was the guy with the green dot on his helmet. And the responsibility that comes with that is relaying to the rest of the defense, making checks, getting everybody on the same page. And he's like, it's damn near impossible to do that when you're playing dime linebacker and you're split out all the way outside wide, covering a guy, and you trying to get the signal to the boundary corner on the other side of the football field. Like, you can't do that. He's like, I'd much rather be the Mike linebacker, get in the middle of the football field, controlling everything, getting everybody lined up, and being able to communicate with everybody and having that done. He's like, what was crazy was when they tried Jamin at middle linebacker, he like, I would have the green dot still, and I would relay the call to Jamin. And, if I'm making an adjustment, I would tell Jamin the adjustment, and instead of him relaying it to the rest of the defense, you could see him processing in his head, okay, well, what does that mean for me? Like, how does that change my initial assignment? Now what do I have to do? And so in doing that, he'd be a step slow to try to relay it to the rest of the defense. Ball gets snapped, now there's confusion. So he's like, instead of having to go through that chain of command, just put me at middle linebacker. I love being in that position. I think I flourish there. And he's like, the more I play there, the more I grow, the more I see. So he essentially was begging to be the Mike linebacker next year. I'd love it. Put Cole Holcomb at the Mike and leave him there, okay? Like, that's so much better than putting, David Mayo or John Bostic there. I get it. Holcomb is a chess piece that you want outside, that you want guarding tight ends and, things of that nature. He can also run with running backs too. Like, I would prefer Cole Holcomb to be in the middle, calling the shots, getting everybody lined up. He's a smart dude. And you know what else I thought was really introspective of Cole Holcomb? I love Cole Holcomb, first of all. And that's why I said, to me, after Terry, he's the next biggest piece of extension news that we need to hear. Because obviously Scherff is no longer under contract. So that's not an extension. That's a brand new deal. We're talking about guys that have a year left or more on their contracts but need to be extended out. Terry, to me, at the very top of that list. I think Cole Holcomb is right behind him because he's a leader on his team. But to me, he's a guy that holds others accountable. And you need a lot of those guys in the locker room. I don't know if we have enough of those guys. I think we got a lot of guys that are leaders that aren't necessarily vocal leaders, but example guys. Like Terry isn't a vocal rah-rah guy, even though at times he'll step up and say what needs to be said. But for the most part, Terry will tell you himself, I'm not really that vocal guy. I don't really tell guys what they need to do. That's more of a Jonathan Allen thing. Well, it can't just be Jonathan Allen all the time. You need other guys that will step up and do that as well. And I think Cole Holcomb is one of those types of guys that will not necessarily be in everybody's face, but he, says the things that I don't hear a lot of other guys saying. I think Bobby McCain is another one of those dudes that'll say the shit that a lot of people are afraid to say. You need guys like that in your locker room. And, Cole Holcomb said, look, everybody's got to be accountable this offseason. Look in the mirror, see what you did, well, what you didn't do well, come back and be a better version of yourself and a stronger football player. But he said, in particular for myself, he's like, what I have to do, and I love hearing this, he's like, I've got to see a play, and I know what's happening. And he said, all my life, the reason I've gotten to the point that I've gotten to now is that I've always done my job. And you hear this on the football field all the time. Just do your job. Just do your job. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. But just doing your job sometimes isn't enough. And Cole Holcomb finally got to that realization. And to me, of all the positions on the field, linebacker is the one that, to me, the most needs to go above and beyond the call of duty, above and beyond just doing your job. Like if a defensive lineman does his job, it'll free up the linebacker. So the linebacker can't just say, well, I'll just do my job. No, go be a playmaker. And Cole Holcomb said, I have to start being a playmaker. He's like, doing my job is what's got me here and what's kept me here. But at some point, if I know my gap is backside, but the ball is going to the opposite direction, I don't need to run to my backside gap. I see where the ball is going. I know where the ball is going. I've watched enough film to be comfortable to know where that ball is going. I just need to go make the play. That's all I want to hear. And the more he believes that, the more he starts to do that because he's got the talent. He's got the speed. He's got the physicality. He's shown us that when he fires his gun, there aren't many linebackers, to me, in this league that can do it like Cole Holcomb. The problem is he's just not aggressive enough. And I think there's a play against the Eagles. We all remember the play. They're down by the goal line on a third down. It looks like Boston Scott's about to score a touchdown. He cuts it back. There's nobody there. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Cole Holcomb shows up and plasters him down at the 2-yard line. And I'm thinking, well, we just stopped them and forced them to have to kick a field goal. They went for it on fourth down. They got it. But that's Cole Holcomb in a nutshell. When he sees it and he goes, remember the play last year against Dallas when he blitzed and blew up Zeke Elliott and made the sack? Like, that's what happens when Cole Holcomb sees it and just goes and he trusts it. He's blitzing. He can just go and uncork a can of whoop ass. We see that from him from time to time. Same thing with Jamin Davis. When these guys stop thinking, they just go out and play, they're going to be dangerous. And so I like hearing that from Cole Holcomb, And so I'm excited about what we can, put on the field. Matt Ioannidis said he was not pleased with the way this season went. He shouldn't have been. He wasn't good this year. He wasn't the Matt Ioannidis that we've come to know and love. He was invisible most games, okay? The Matt Ioannidis we've come to know and love was the best interior defensive lineman that we had. We would talk about Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne, but Ioannidis was the guy, if you didn't want to classify him as the best because overall you need to stop the run as well, fine. But pass rush-wise, there wasn't a better interior defensive lineman than Matt Ioannidis on this team. And he was invisible and non-existent this year. And again, a lot of you like to harken back to our defensive line coach, Sam Mills III. Don't get me started on him. I think there's a reason for the regression across the board. I mean, Montez Sweat took a step back this year. Chase Young took a step back this year. And Ioannidis took a step back this year. Now, you can say, well, Young had a fantastic rookie season, and Sam Mills III was his coach. I think he was still using a lot of the things that he had from Ohio State in his rookie season. And I think Sam Mills really sunk his teeth into all of these guys in year two. And that's why I think they took a step back. But that's nor here nor there. It is what it is because I don't think he's going anywhere. And so at the end of the day, I heard a lot of guys excited about the future. You know, Deron Payne said, I want to be here. You know, Terry McLaurin says pretty much, I want to be here. Like, we know these guys want to be here. And Scherff and Jonathan Allen and all the leaders on the team say, look, we're building something. Charles Leno said, I wanted to be here. I could have went to free agency. I want to be here because I know that the future is bright and we're building something and we're going in the right direction. And what are they supposed to say, right? But some of this stuff is unsolicited. Like, it's one thing if you're directly asked these questions, and then it's another thing when you volunteer this and they didn't ask you that. And that's what you're getting from these players. They feel like something is brewing here and that, you know, a couple pieces here, a couple pieces there. Obviously, the quarterback position is the biggest one. And then this team could really, you know, kind of get pushed over the top. So I'm excited about the future. This is a big offseason. We'll see what happens. The last thing I'll leave you with, and then we'll get out of here. We know that 3 guys in particular know what the jersey looks like and what the new name is. You know, that not everybody knows. You know, I think most of the guys on the team know because you tell Terry McLaurin, you tell Chase Young, you tell Jonathan Allen, they're going to tell their teammates. And, you know, and they just say, hey, keep your mouth shut. But at the end of the day, all 3 of those guys obviously know they're a part of the campaign that they're putting out there. We all saw them in their 2-2-22 T-shirts and things of that nature. And all of them know the name, and they all said the same thing. The jerseys are dope. Jonathan Allen even went as far as to say, look, I didn't have high expectations for this whole process. I didn't think they would do it the way that they did it, but this thing was well thought out, well executed, and I think the fan base is going to love it. Sounds good. Again, what is he supposed to say? But when you don't really like something, the key is to be vague. If someone doesn't think your baby's cute, they don't say, oh my God, your baby's so cute. Look at his hair. Look at his smile. They just say, oh my God, look at your baby's outfit. That's so cute. That's a cute shirt. Yeah, translation, I don't think your baby's all that cute, you know? And so at the end of the day, he didn't have to go out of his way to say that the jerseys are dope, the execution is dope, everything looks great, and that he's excited and fired up about it. He could have just said, yeah, I think they've done a good job with it, and we'll see what happens when they roll it out on February the 2nd. But he didn't say that. So we'll see. I know a lot of you are excited, as am I. I'm just ready for it to be over with. But at the end of the day, we need to win football games, and that's the thing that's the most important. So we'll be live on Thursday night. We'll talk about Ron Rivera. We'll really dig into Ron Rivera and Martin Mayhew's presser from today. I'll leave you with that on that note, though, and get out of here and allow you to enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll come back and we'll chop it up on Thursday night, and we'll talk about everything under the sun pertaining to this football team. I am a Washington fan, etched in burgundy and gold. My Washington spirit will never die. Washington spirit will never fold. Until we meet again, hail to our beloved Washington football team. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys on Thursday night. Until then, you guys take care. Have a good one.
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. There's the snap, hand to Riggins. Good hold. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone. The 35.